So Becky, let's just jump into it. How did you get started diving? You talked a little bit about it.
Yeah, I just was always interested in the water, and when I was 10, my parents I set up an aquarium, and I would hang out at the fish store a lot, just checking out fish and learning about aquariums and all the different types of fish. And then I got a subscription to Skin Diver magazine, and it's not around anymore, but you probably remember it. And I
You.
just did a lot of reading in Skin Diver, and I mean, long story short, I was 12 or almost 12. It was like 2 weeks before my 12th birthday, and my dad took me down to Florida for a cousin's wedding. And there was a dive shop attached to the hotel that we were staying at in Pompano Beach. And I obviously already knew what diving was, and I was like, I need to go diving. And I did my first resort course down in Pompano Beach when I was just before my 12th birthday. And I just remember submerging and like seeing the reef below me, and I knew I was going to do it the rest of my life, like from the time from that moment forward. So I went back home to Pennsylvania. I found a dive shop, and I signed up for classes. I begged my parents to drive me there, and they did. So I got certified in a very cold, dark quarry in Pennsylvania, in Erie, Pennsylvania. But I even loved that at the time. I mean, although it was like late May, June, and I was looking at all the people like walking back and forth in dry suits going, I need one of those. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I was like, they look warmer than me. I need one of those. Um, so yeah, so I got into it when I was pretty young. I did my advanced in rescue pretty closely after I did my open water, and then unfortunately my father passed away when I was 13. So we moved to Florida. My mom, my brother, and I moved to Florida where we had family, and obviously one of the worst things that could happen to me in my life is losing a parent. But at the same time, moving to Florida also probably helped with what I do today because I had a lot of opportunities to go diving and in different directions in diving as well.
That's amazing. So your underwater cinematography, how did that begin?
Oh, so I picked up a camera when I was pretty young, maybe when I was 14, and it was just a Icolite housing that you put disposable cameras into, and I wanted to show my friends and family what I was seeing underwater. So I started photography then, and then just always whenever I could afford a slightly better camera, I would get a better camera, and I always had a passion for photography. And in school, I was fortunate that my high school did video courses, so I did both photography and video courses at my high school. And so I sort of started falling in love with documentaries and telling stories, even from an early age. And at the time, I was following a lot of what Wes Skiles and Jill Heinerth were doing in documenting Wakulla Springs in Florida. That was around like 1998. So yeah, so I sort of just got that spark and that passion for storytelling and documentary work. And in college, I continued on. I did some marine biology courses, but then I still did a lot more journalism and thought, all right, how can I turn this into a career? And it was not an easy or a black and white path, but doing underwater documentaries and photography is was my main goal. And I didn't know how long it was going to take me to get there. Sometimes it takes a little bit of luck, but it definitely takes a lot of hard work and passion and dedication because yeah, it's just there's no clear path, like I said, to get there.
Absolutely. So you started with open water and advanced in rescue and all that. What certification do you have? Did you go the pro route?
Yeah, I did. So I actually did my up to my master diver when I was like 16, and then at the same time, I had already done my cavern diver course because living in Florida, I was diving in the springs a lot, and they were there in my backyard. They were either free or $5, and when I was 14, 15, I couldn't afford to go out on boats all the time, so I wanted to see a little bit more into these mysterious caverns and caves. So at that time, the YMCA would teach kids at like 14 to do a cavern diver course. So I did my cavern diver, started my interest in caves and caverns, and I actually did my apprentice when I was like 16, and I had probably 100 cave dives before I even did my full cave when I was 18. Basically, what I always get asked the question, like, what held you back? For me, it was age. Like I couldn't get the classes I wanted fast enough, or I'd have a lot of dives in between. But sometimes I think that was a good thing because it gave me a lot of practice, and I had really great mentors at the time too. But I did become a dive master and instructor when I was 18 through NAUI. and I am still currently an instructor. So I did that in 2000, and it's 2023. So 23 years later, I'm still teaching, but right now I just teach technical diving and mainly rebreathers.
Okay, right on. What rebreathers are you certified on?
Many, but I teach. I'm certified on about 5 different rebreathers, but I teach the Megalodon, Tiburon, and I am also a Liberty instructor.
Okay,
Mhm.
neat.
Mhm.
So in 2013, you were inducted to the Women's Hall of Fame. Congratulations, of course, a little belated 10 years ago. But now how has that recognition impacted your career as a whole and within the industry?
It was a great honor, and honestly, I was really shocked because at the time, I think I was 29 or 30, so I didn't really expect to be inducted into Women Divers Hall of Fame so young. I still thought, I have a lot more to do. Like, what's going on? And then I found that Women Divers Hall of Fame is pretty incredible about trying to help inspire both men and women, younger in the younger generation, to get into diving, but particularly women. And we use our fame to try to help raise money and scholarships. So I mean, at a lot of different events and stuff, if I'm recognized for it, I just like to remind everybody that it's I love diving first, and I'm a diver first, and it's an incredible recognition. But in the end, it's really even a more amazing opportunity to try to help others, continue with our sport that we all love so much.
That's awesome. So, Becky, as a woman in the industry, though, what unique challenges have you faced and how have you overcome them?
I get that question a lot, and actually, it's one of my least favorite questions because I actually feel that I, being a woman, has allowed me to stand out in the industry. So I have not faced like sexism or any of those issues that a lot of people say they faced. I always have had a lot of male instructors that have been very supportive. I mean, I'm a female technical diving, mixed gas CCR instructor, and I teach military, and I have absolutely no issues with that at all. I think it's important that like for me, I always tried to represent like being professional in our sport and in our industry. So I never did anything crazy. I was with my opinions. I'm very into safety, and so I'll put that out there as well. But I think just being professional has helped quite a bit. But I think being a woman is honestly, like I said, it's helped me stand out amongst say a lot of male photographers in our industry. There's a lot of really incredible female photographers in our industry now as well, and my teams are mostly comprised of men, and they listen. They're extremely helpful and very supportive, which is great. And I still think yes, there's less women in diving, but at the same time, less women want to do it. So I just think it's up to that individual person and what their passion is. But I do find myself leading a lot of all men trips and things like that. But it's it's open to everybody. So yeah, whoever wants to sign up and come along. But yeah, I don't let anything hold me back, and I don't think anybody should let anything hold them back. So
I like that.
uh,
Taking a perceived disadvantage and turning it into a major advantage. I think that's the key to any success overall is, it's very Sun Tzu. I like it.
yeah, thanks.
So, can you share some experiences working with the major networks like National Geographic or Discovery? And what were some of the memorable moments of working with those collaborations?
Wow, yeah, so that I mean, that was always my dream was, to be a director of photography for a National Geographic, documentary, and, I have had some really incredible experiences over the years. Actually, one of my favorites was working on a Red Bull exploration documentary, and the reason was because, like, Red Bull really wanted, they wanted real exploration. They didn't want any, like, contrived storylines or anything made up. And unfortunately, I don't want to burst any bubbles, but unfortunately, sometimes going into documentaries nowadays, like there's already it's sort of pre-scripted out, and we already know what we're going to shoot and what the story is going to be. So I really really love the stories of true exploration, and that we may not find anything at the end, or the exploration may not go as planned. and Red Bull was really into doing that kind of documentary. So we did a story in the Bahamas in Abaco called The Crystal Labyrinth, and it was with Brian K. Cook and my good friend Brett Hemphill. And they were looking to connect two caves together, and they got really, really close. Didn't quite do it, but for me, um, I'd consider myself an explorer, but these guys are true explorers. I mean, they're dedicating their lives to exploration and to pushing the limits of what people and technology can do, and putting themselves into like crazy situations. And I love filming that. Like, I love to document those types of people and personalities, and just show and tell their stories, because some of these people are very humble, and they'll just, they just go and they're doing their exploration, and sometimes nobody even knows about it. So to be able to tell those stories is really what excites me most. And so doing that Red Bull documentary was really exciting. And then, yeah, I've done quite a few for Nat Geo as well. My husband and I did a documentary years ago where it was very difficult in planning, because they wanted a host and an archaeologist to be live, basically doing a live feed from inside a cenote that had an 80-foot rappel. And so we had calm lines, and it took us months and months to just set up the logistics for this shoot. So sometimes everyone sees the end product and goes, wow, that was a really cool documentary. But sometimes it takes us 3 or 5, 6 months just to plan everything out, the calls and the logistics, all the behind the scenes stuff. Get the equipment ready, build equipment sometimes. So,
Absolutely. It sounds like taking a novice into a cave at 80 feet is definitely an experience unto itself, I'm sure.
oh, you mean the
No.
host of the show? Oh, yeah, he actually had a cavern certification, and we were only in a cavern since it was a cenote. It was a cenote in the Yucatan, so basically just like a pit.
Okay.
So, yeah, there was no overhead on that as well, but there were delicate artifacts and human remains in there as well. So we had a whole safety team just to make sure that like our comm lines and fiber optic cable for our live video feed going up to the surface wouldn't like harm any of these like artifacts inside of this cenote. So it's sometimes there's a lot of people behind the scenes that nobody sees. So I always like to share that as well. That I have been very successful, and I'm very appreciative of that. But I also have a really amazing team of people that helps me out with whether it's lighting, safety, logistics, helping to build equipment, and they're all behind the scenes. And I couldn't do a lot of the shoots that I do without their support.
Absolutely. Well, I think Jill Heinrich told me one day that what is it, 2 hours for every 1 minute of documentary?
Yeah, it's probably about right. It's sometimes we'll shoot for 3 weeks, and it's only 5, 8 minutes of footage that's shown in the final product. So, it can be a little frustrating, because sometimes you're watching the final thing on television, and you're going, "Oh, they didn't use this shot that I really loved." Like, 'cause we'll personally fall in love with a shot or spend maybe a whole day just to light it, and maybe it's not used because it just doesn't fit in the final piece. But yeah, it's a lot of fun just collaborating and coming up with these shots.
It's absolutely amazing when you start looking at the amount of effort it goes into such a short amount of time to create and build something like that. So we're grateful for your time and patience to be able to create those amazing documentaries that you have done so far.
But that being said, like for me, I love doing documentaries. Maybe we spend 10 days to 3 weeks shooting one. That's sort of shorter form documentary. I mean, I'd love to work on like something like a Frozen Planet where they have years to get some of these shots that you see in those types of documentaries. But like movies, I don't have the patience for movies. Like to spend like months and months on one scene. Like I said before, I prefer more of the natural world and natural history, and yeah, and going down and spending a couple weeks. So also, if I don't like the project, it's over in 3 weeks, and then we move on to the next one. That's another reason I love doing what I do, because I like variety, and I don't just love cave diving or shipwrecks. I love marine life and wildlife, so I really enjoy a mix of different underwater environments, and doing a mix of things throughout the year.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
So In your position, I know you don't see yourself as a role model at that point. At this point, it seems average for you, but you have become a role model. What's your most rewarding experience mentoring young divers?
I would have to say teaching because being an instructor is, I mean, obviously important to pass along like my knowledge and experience to others, especially in these technical diving environments, or if I'm teaching rebreathers, because I mean it can be life or death, and it can be extremely dangerous. And I have lost a lot of friends over the years, and I don't want to lose anymore. So I think by teaching and mentoring, I get a lot of younger divers. A lot of people say that rebreathers are, usually for, or more older people get into rebreathers, which is probably true. But I seem to attract more people in their 20s, which is, I think, amazing, that they can afford and get into diving a rebreather. But I also want to instill that they can be dangerous, and, to not, that training doesn't just end like after class. And for me, that I'm always there, and I try to encourage them to come on trips with me and just like continue diving and learning after class ends, because you don't just learn everything in 5 or 6 days that you need to know. And so I think teaching would have to be the most important, probably one of the most important things that I feel that I do. Um,
That's amazing. How did you get into rebreather?
oh, wow. So I was a trimix cave diver by the time, I mean, I did my cave when I was 18, my full cave, and then I did trimix when I was maybe a year later, in 2021. And I was diving deep caves till about 25. So, for 18 to 25, diving Eagle's Nest and Buford and all kinds of deep caves around Florida, and deep shipwrecks as well in Florida. And one day I was doing a wreck in South Florida called the RBJ, and it's close to 300 feet deep. And I was standing there with my double steel low pressure 95s, two stages of deco gas, my camera, and like my knees were shaking because I'm standing on the back of the boat as they're setting us up to drop us off. And I was just like, I can't possibly carry anymore. And I mean, I consider myself strong, but I mean, I was like 120 pounds and like standing there, like shaking, trying to hold all of my gear and the camera. And I see these guys in rebreathers just like stand up and like easily walk over to the side and, get ready to clip on their bailouts. And I'm like, yep, it's time. I need one of those. But I was 25 at the time, and I was, working as a photojournalist in Florida, and all my money was still going into diving, but I couldn't quite afford a rebreather at the time. And then, fortunately, I got hired to do my very first documentary. And the trade was I got a rebreather and training as part of the documentary. So I got very fortunate there. But it was an inspiration, or an evolution at the time, evolution rebreather. And so I did the training when I was 25, and that was my introduction to rebreathers. I dived that unit for about a year, and then I decided that it wasn't quite the right unit for me. Not anything safety wise, but I was doing mostly cave diving and travel, and at the time it was just the big yellow box, so it was very difficult in the caves for me trying to like push that through the water. So I did a crossover to the Megalodon, and I've been on that now for like 16 years. But during that time, I've taken a lot of other courses on other rebreathers, because rebreathers in general just interest me, and learning the differences between them. So I've done classes on Kisses and Liberties and other units. Side mount, I dive the side mount Liberty. So I just find all of these rebreathers pretty fascinating, how they work and the different technologies that go into them.
So you are a full rebreather instructor. What advice do you want to give to divers that are moving into CCR?
Do a lot of research first, and like figure out what is most important to you. Do a lot of research, and also find a good instructor. So don't just pick the unit and go, okay, these are the instructors that teach that unit. I think finding a good instructor and mentor is probably one of the most important things you can do, because like for me, my first unit wasn't the unit I ended up staying on. So I mean, but if you get the base of knowledge and you meet somebody who can really instill safety and like what a rebreather is and do the proper training with you. I think that's one of the most important things you can do. And dive with others that are on the same unit. That is also important. Like when I first started diving a rebreather, and that's what I tell my students now, is you can dive with anybody who's on any unit, any rebreather, but you're going to learn a lot more too if you're diving with somebody who's on the same unit, because you may have questions or you might not remember something from your initial class that they can help you out with. So I think finding the right instructor, uh, doing a lot of research on the unit. And what I mean by that is like, what type of environment are you diving in? Are you primarily diving in caves or in shipwrecks, or do you primarily travel? Because some units really are easier to travel with, or some units might be better suited for caves than wreck diving and things like that, or cold water diving. So doing a lot of research and asking a lot of questions, I think, is really important.
Right on. So I have questions scattered through here as well from other divers that I know that are fantastic. And Jenna Turner would say, she asks, "What would you tell yourself as a baby diver?"
Like when I first started,
Exactly.
what would I tell myself? Wow, I don't know. I guess I just tell myself, like, keep going, because you have no idea where this is going to lead you. Uh, yeah, that's a great question. Get a dry suit sooner. That's what I would have told myself. Get a dry suit sooner. You know what? I guess I would have told myself, because like, no, I didn't have a lot of money when I first started. My mom couldn't afford to buy me equipment, so I bought all my equipment myself. So I bought used equipment. But I would say, if I went back, I would tell myself maybe just save up a little bit longer, and spend a little bit more time and buy some better equipment, because that equipment can last a lot longer than sometimes buying less expensive equipment, or cheaper equipment. So I would probably just told myself, I know you're anxious, I know you're really anxious to get your first regulator, but instead of getting something that might not grow with you as a diver, just wait, spend a little bit more money. And if you know you're going to stay in the sports, just spend a little bit more money on the gear, because like that gear will then last you, you know, for 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, you could use that, regulator for ice diving maybe someday. So like that's probably what I would tell myself.
Right on. Christina Zanato, one of my favorite women divers of all time, she says, "What was the loudest doubt you've heard in your head as you moved forward with your plans, and what did you do to quiet it down?"
Oh, Christina. We've had a lot of personal discussions on this as well. The quietest doubt. Should I keep doing this? Should I keep going? Like, is it worth it? Um, like, especially when I first started, when I took the leap, from having, let's call it a real job with a paycheck every 2 weeks, and security, medical insurance, everything like that. When my husband and I started, our company back in 2007, it was very difficult. A lot of ups and downs when you're working for yourself. Sometimes you get work, and there's other times where there is no work, and you start to doubt yourself, like, should I really be doing this? Am I good enough? Or sometimes just like, is this really possible? Is this just a dream, or can I actually make this into a career? And how did I quiet those doubts? I put them all in a bag, and I just like worked even harder, because um, I thought to myself, well, I can always go back. I can always. I started as a photojournalist in TV news, and I thought I can always go back to that. But like, I don't want to. This is what I want to do. So I quieted those doubts by just pushing forward and working even harder, and doing whatever I needed to do, like working birthdays, holidays, any 7 days a week, working all hours of the night, basically, whether it was on websites or promotion, going to dive shows and networking, um, whatever I needed to do to be able to keep moving forward and pursuing this as a career.
That's amazing. So, Becky, we all fail and succeed. Can you tell me a time that you just failed miserably, and how did you handle it, and what did you do to pick yourself back up?
Yeah, we all, yeah, failure happens quite a bit. I think you have to fail in order to become better. And anyone who says that they've never failed, well, then I don't know that you're doing it enough, because you have to learn from the failures. And I've certainly made a lot of mistakes over the years, whether it was mistakes in diving or mistakes with, photography or things like that. And you definitely, you need to grow from them, and kind of step back and analyze, like, what did I do? How can I do it differently? Are you looking for a specific like time or a specific?
Do you have one specifically that you can focus?
Ooh, um, I mean, I'm sure I have many. Time where I failed and yeah, I can't think of anything right now, but
Worries.
there's been plenty, trust me.
Absolutely. Well, Becky, thank you so much. We're going to break this into two parts to make sure we get the best time out of this. Becky, thank you so much for being a part of this. We're going to pick this up in just a little bit in part two.
All right, sounds great.
There you go, guys. Have it. Becky Schott is amazing. This is part one of a two-part interview series that we're going to talk. In part two, make sure to listen in for that. It'll come in a few days, and that we're going to go over her deep wreck stuff in the Great Lakes, which I just find amazing and fascinating. How she prepares herself and some of her secrets on that as well. Becky, thank you for coming in.
Thanks so much for having me.